up your eyes and you will see. Love is everything to me. Culture Club from the incredibly 80s movie Electric Dreams, which we haven't seen. Good. Hey everybody, Matt Colville here. I ran D&D last week for my friend Gertz, my coworker Gertz, who, funnily enough, I don't know Gertz that well. Me spending 5 hours running D&D with him is probably the longest I've spent with him at a time. He is a friend of some of the other players. He's a cool guy, but he is one of the Eloi who work on the second floor, and I am one of the Morlocks that work down on the first floor of Turtle Rock Studios. And he had come up with a backstory, which we've got here. I will probably at some point before the stream tomorrow, if I have time, take this and turn it into something you can read. It was just 3 emails with him saying what he wanted to do and me giving him some backstory and asking some questions, and then him responding and giving me some more backstory, and try to clean it up and turn it into something we can put into a PDF. Hey everybody. Sorry, Trograph, if it's not working on your phone, I apologize. So I ran Sony E3. Hey, Captain Juggy, if indeed that is your real name. And anybody else who's in the stream or who can't make it, that's fine. This is all going to end up on YouTube. We're going to stream for an hour. I mean, maybe we'll run out of stuff to talk about, because really all I want to do is go over how D&D went on Friday night and let you folks know how I saw things from my side of the screen. Clockwork, I'm glad you got the advice. I hope it works out for you. Always have a backup plan. If you ever only have one way to get your players from point A to point B, then you have one way too few. You always need a backup plan in case they don't go for the thing that you intended them to go for. And if you're me and you've been doing this for a million years, you can kind of make up a way on the fly. But my recommendation to new DMs is Mool a real race? Yes. Well, real. I mean, no. There aren't really dwarves or elves, but they are a race that have been part of Dungeons and Dragons since the early 90s. They're from a game called Dark Sun, and there's been a 3rd edition. Was there a 3rd edition version of Dark Sun? I don't remember. Maybe not, but it was a big part of 2nd edition, the classic Brahm art that introduced the world to Brahm. And so you still had this up from last time? You still scared? Yeah. Yes, MC's app. We've been streaming ever since Friday night. This is what we do. I live on Twitch now. So yeah, he said he wanted to be a mule, and I was like, okay. So my attitude toward that. So let's talk about that, right? Because I explicitly told him, this is a human game. It's a game about human beings and politics, and these people that you're going to meet are all xenophobes, and they don't like strangers, they don't like outsiders, and they think if you look like a dwarf, they're going to think you're a slaver, and they don't like slavers. And that xenophobia is grounded in their experience. The dwarves really are slavers. That's the price they pay to the overlord. That's the tension. That's the central tension of the dwarves right now. And so he read my handout. I said, it's a human-centric game. You can play what you want, but it's a human-centric game. Oh, I got the little... Do you guys hear the little Atari adventure? Is there a cure for vampirism in your campaign setting? Of course. If you are resourceful enough... I mean, I think every D&D game is set after the fall of some earlier, more powerful, more advanced, magically... I think we all agree, magically advanced race. And as a result, there's always some lore that you can go research or tap into to do anything you want to do. Like, hey, I want to try to find an answer to this question. It's always out there. That's one of the fun things about D&D. Oh, you guys don't hear the... That's too bad. I don't know why I hear it and you guys don't. That's crazy. Hey, Raisin Girl, I'm glad you made it. So yeah, there was Strawman Matt. Hey, Strawman Matt. So I was... Honestly, when he said he wanted to play a mule, I was like, ugh. Right? Because I was like, humans. And not only did he not want to play a human, he didn't want to play anything from the player's handbook. And there's stuff in the player's handbook that I have to work to kind of find a way in. He wanted to play something that there isn't even an official 5th edition version of. But there was a reason for that. He read the handout and he's like, oh, dwarves. Okay, cool. I could be the product of this slaver culture, a slaver who had a human female for a slave and wanted to breed a half-dwarf kind of gladiator battle kind of guy. And so it wasn't just that he loved Dark Sun. It was that he read my thing and thought, oh, I've got a cool idea here. So if you meet me halfway, what would you absolutely not let someone be in my setting? I wouldn't let them be a character from Gundam, right? It has to be, as long as it's something you can find in fantasy, if in D&D, I will probably let you do it, but you're going to be able to, you're going to get a lot more out of me if you meet me halfway. It's time to turn down the phone. I'm gonna have to set up. I'm gonna have to fix OBS or something, because I really like that that you guys can't hear when somebody. Who was it that just? I want to be able to say hi to people who click follow. So Gertz met me halfway on that. Is if you read if you come to the setting and you're like, here's how I break it down, and I'm not necessarily advising you guys do this, but this is how I do it. If you don't read my handout and you say, I want to play a clockwork character, I want to play a Warforged from Eberron. If I know you haven't read the handout, then I will do a little bit of work to try to accommodate you, and then I'm probably going to ignore you. As far as not ignore you as a player, I'm going to not really... Gilmore Vax Shipper. That doesn't sound like the name your mother gave you. But welcome. Thank you for following. How do I keep track of consistency in my campaign? I have this huge computer that was installed 45 years ago. It needs an update. The only reason you're hearing it, Fronalo, is because you can hear it from my speakers, but you should be able to. I thought you could hear it. So yeah, if you come up with some crazy thing for my game, I'm only going to say no. And I've had this happen. I've had players do this. I've had players want to play science fiction characters. And I just say, no, that's out of genre. But if you want to play something, VuCode 07, hello, welcome aboard. If you want to, if you don't meet me halfway, okay, so you get no, 8 minutes in, so we gotta hurry. If you play something out of genre, I want to play a cowboy, right? I want to play a guy in a mech suit. No, I would just say no, that's not in genre. If you want to do something in genre, like a Warforged from Eberron, and that's just because you love Warforged and you haven't read any of the stuff I've handed out, I will still say yes, and I will do a little work to accommodate you. But then I'm not going to be going back to your story over and over again, because you didn't meet me halfway. Gertz met me halfway. He's like, I want to do this thing. I'm like, that sounds fine. That's great. As long as somebody does me the courtesy, it's not even 2 pages. So and hopefully it's engaging. Matt, how are we the same age? But I have more hair, DNA, and it's less of it's great. I dye my hair. I mean, come on. Let's not beat around the bush, right? So Gertz, I hope you guys watched the stream, because if you didn't, this is going to be boring. So I hope you guys also read the notes. Excuse me for a second. It's going to get loud and weird here. Strike Del Toro. I wonder if that's somebody who's a fan of. I wonder if that's like Striker Pentecost from Pacific Rim and Guillermo del Toro, because I love Guillermo del Toro. So yeah, Cudgel, I mean, there are ways, I would say, like, if the crazier and less thoughtful someone's character is, the less I feel obligated to engage with them. I don't mean them as a player, I mean that's important. I don't mean them as a player. They're still going to get their turn in combat, they're still going to get to talk to NPCs, they're probably still going to have fun, but I'm not going to be delving into their backstory and mining it for plot hooks. That's the best way to put it. So, those of you who thought, man, what an asshole, because of what I said before, if you don't meet me halfway, then I'm not going to be mining your story for plot hooks. You're probably still going to have a lot of fun, but you got to at least come up with a crazy idea. That's fine, but have that crazy idea be in some way predicated on something that you read or we talked about. Yeah, this is a Q&A on the one-on-one session, Two Muffins. So probably you guys, I can't imagine that many people, at most I think about 200 people, watched the 5-hour stream. That really wiped me out. If you read the notes, I started that session with a cutscene, right? Gertz's character, Vorkus, was in the Dwagar mines. That's where his backstory that he and I had worked on in email, which you can see here, which I will at some point clean up and send out. That's where his backstory left him, was a slave to the Dwagar, a punishment for disobeying his commanding officer in the Sand Scorpions. And I wanted to get him from there to, ultimately, I wanted to get him to Tor Keep and get him to meet Baltair, my friend Tom's character, whom you're going to get to meet tomorrow. And as a result, we had a schedule to keep. And that's unusual for me in a game like this. It was like we were on tour, and it's like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's the Dwagar Keep. We have 30 minutes. Everybody be on the bus when the bus leaves. Otherwise, you'll be left behind. And so if you watch the stream, you may have seen that there were times, like in Broken Spire Keep, where he could do what he wanted to do. He could explore. He could go left or right. It was up to him. He was exploring a dungeon, basically. But otherwise, I was always thinking about the pacing, moving it along, making sure that we were going to land on target at the end of the tour. And so that was a big part of it. Normally solo adventures are a lot more the player gets to do what they want, right? That's the point. The player gets to explore stuff and take all the time in the world they want, talk to all the NPCs they want to talk to. But in this case, I was running a solo adventure whose goal was get to the church on time, as it were. So that's a big part of why it was so kind of railroady, right? Something I'm not normally that in favor of. So he explosion with a fedora. I hope you liked the book. Thank you for reading it. So if you read the notes, there was this whole thing I wrote, this opening cutscene with these 4 NPCs who all represent different bad guy factions in the world. And I wasn't happy with that. I don't know if you could tell watching. I wasn't happy with the way it played out. And I'll tell you why. I wrote down the scene. I wrote down all the dialogue, who talked when, and I put thought into it, and I wanted it to sound dramatic, and I needed to hit certain plot points. And thankfully, Gertz took notes. That makes me happy. I used to award extra experience points to players that took notes. But Gertz took notes, so I knew that information didn't go down the sink. But I did a thing that they taught me in speech debate class not to do. I did complain that it got late, and so we ended up... Yes, that's correct. That's an observation, not a question. How much of the session being railroady was because of Gertz being a more spectator-type player? Well, that's a good question. I didn't know what kind of player Gertz was going to be. And if he had been more... I think, actually, if he had been a more active player, right? A more like a tactician player, I think it might have gone faster, right? Because there were several periods where he was kind of... He didn't know what to do. He was afraid, probably because he felt like he's alone. He didn't know who he was fighting. He didn't know what was around the corner, the next corner. He didn't know what was on the other side of the door. He didn't know it was just 4 skeletons, right? If he had known it was 4 skeletons, he would have burst in there and killed them, and it wouldn't take much time at all. But I'm not sure. Certainly, him being very passive allowed me to just go, but that also meant it was a lot more exhausting for me, which is not a huge amount of fun. So the that opening cutscene that played out, I didn't like. I wasn't happy with, because it wasn't what my speech and debate teachers taught me. In speech debate, we learned, do not memorize your speech. If you memorize your speech, then when you inevitably lose your place and screw up, which happens, there's nothing you can do about it, nobody's perfect, that you will have no recourse other than to stand there looking like an idiot going through your notes. And I didn't even memorize it. What I should have done was either what I did with Edric, which was a lot more successful, I think, was I just wrote down who Edric was. That's all. I didn't write down any dialogue for Edric. And as a result, since I just knew who he was in my head, I could just play him. I could just run him. I could just say his dialogue. Whereas these 4 characters in the opening cutscene, I could have just made a couple of bullet points saying this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And here's who this guy... And you can see I said, here's who this guy is, and here's who this person is. And then if I had just done that and had no dialogue or anything like that, I could have played this scene out, but I could have extemporaneously improvised it. And I think it would have gone a lot better. Or what I should have done was just actually read it. I had taken the time to write it down, but I wanted it to be eye-to-eye contact with Gertz and actually playing the characters. And so I didn't just read it. I had written it down. If you're going to write it down, just read it, right? If you're going to write a scene out, if you're going to write NPCs talking to each other, this person says and then that person says, don't try to remember what you wrote down before, because you're going to fail and you're going to screw up and you're going to look like an idiot like I did. Actually just read it. Or better is to just make notes about what they want and what's going to happen and then play it out extemporaneously. So let's scroll up. Lag should not be due to me, FYI, because I've got 20 up and there's nothing going on here. It may just be that a lot of people it may literally be that I'm near LA. And so all the traffic, my traffic to Time Warner should be fine. Let's see. Gilmore Vac Shipper, I'm glad you liked the solo adventure. I've done several of them, and in fact, it's my favorite way probably to begin a campaign is to take each player and role play their backstory. So when they show up to the party, they're not saying stuff like, "Oh, here, I was a slave, or I was a soldier, I was a sailor, I did this, I did that. My father did this, or whatever." They actually remember it because they played it. It's not something they just wrote down. But this was super, super time intensive. Let's see. Has he played Rantang? Hey, Jim, what's up? Gertz has not. Has he played D&D a little bit at work with Ray? You know Ray, Jim. Ray's ran a game for several weeks with Gertz, and he played like 15 years ago. But he's not completely new. Are you gonna have chat active when I stream tomorrow? Well, I mean, not in the sense that you mean, Two Muffins. No. I think that what I've learned is currently I can trust the people in chat not to completely the only reason I'm looking at chat is because, well, I want to make sure that nothing's happened with the video, right? Here at home, I have a lot more control over what's going on. At work, the system at work is a lot more complex. And Jerry wasn't there. Jerry left. Fire Ignix. Fire Ignix is not following. Yay! Welcome aboard, Fire Ignix. We're talking about D&D, the stream I ran for my friend Gertz, Joshua Gertz, last Friday. We're going to run again tomorrow night. He's going to meet the rest of the party. So this time, actually 8 o'clock tomorrow night Pacific Standard Time, we're going to get more D&D. I want to make sure that Twitch isn't going, "Hey, we lost you. What happened?" But also B, because I don't want to find out that someone in chat is being a wang rod and have to ban them, because I don't have somebody. But so far that hasn't been a problem. So tomorrow when we run D&D, it's just going to be we will not be able to see the chat. So if something fails, it's going to be up to those people that know me in real life to text me on my phone and say, "Matt, WTF." What do you think about adventures that introduce out-of-genre elements? If that's your game, that's fine. I would probably not use one for the game I'm running now, but I could certainly run so I'm running a campaign. I'm the showrunner for a TV show. I'm running NCIS. And you're asking me what I think about Star Trek. I love Star Trek, but it would be weird for Captain Kirk to show up in NCIS. When NCIS is canceled, I may go run a Star Trek game. What gave you the inspiration for the mirror? It was my friend Jim's game. A lot of the stuff I rip off. Dankar. Welcome, Dankar. Are you a half-orc? You sound like a half-orc, Dankar. I wish I had the... Anyway. A lot of the stuff is stuff I've ripped off from other people. The Mirror of Gilmara is something I ripped off from my friend Jim. And it was, I think, the mirror that I ripped off, it wasn't called the Mirror of Gilmara in his game. It was called like the Mirror of something else. And it was just a thing that showed you someone's true identity. And so I just took it and riffed on it. And probably I forgot what it really was. And in my memory, I remember it being this epic thing. But then I went back and I was like, oh, actually, it wasn't that big a deal. So... what experience does Gertz have? I think we talked about that. Not none, but he's not like me. Why did the cleric lose his powers in the Underdark? That is a good question. And the answer is because he had not picked a saint. And got kidnapped really before he could. So if he had been a priest of St. Llewellyn or St. Griffin the Stout or any of the others, literally dozens of saints for all the different gods in that area. And that's just one area. It's the only area that has saints. Then he probably wouldn't have had a problem. It wasn't that he was in the Underdark. That was a kind of a amplifying factor. But eventually he was able to pray to, very few people in my setting pray to a god in this part of the world. They pray to saints. Dwarves have heroes. A dwarven cleric calls upon his hero, like Zarok the Lawgiver, right? Let's see. How do I suggest DMs improve their voice acting? That's a good question, but we only have an hour and I want to get through the, really curious why the Dwargar didn't cut off the scorpion tattoo. I wanted there to be the threat of that because it seemed realistic and I wanted to make it wanted the wizard to seem like an evil guy, carve that off him. But Matt didn't want to take it away from Gertz. That's all. So I just came up with a reason why. He was like, well, we can do that. We can do that after you're done digging. And then of course that didn't happen. So it wasn't just that he was in another dimension. That was part of it, but it's mostly that he hadn't chosen he didn't have a proper conduit to his god at all. Like, didn't matter where he was. He didn't have a proper conduit to his god. And so that's mostly why. Sorry, Trogaff. Sorry you couldn't watch it on the phone. I apologize. I don't know why you can't watch it. I don't know. Should I be seeing video? Yes. I don't know why. Hey, Ozai75. I don't know why the phone, like, shouldn't it be just downsampling it for your phone? So I would like Jin's 19. I would do a solo adventure for everybody if I could. Oh, let's take a look at the page here and see. I'm sure there are some questions. I'll come back to them. When I don't have, how do I prefer to get the gang together? I mean, I don't mind getting them together in a bar. I actually like starting in media res. I like starting with the group already together and in the midst of some action sequence. The James Bond opening, which Lucas and Spielberg ripped off for Indiana Jones because they wanted to make a James Bond movie. So the ball rolling, like the idol and stealing. That's how when I ran for my actor friends. That's how I started it. So that's always fun. I don't feel like characters like that should take a lot of notes, correct, Trina? Well, I mean, if you as a player don't want to take notes because you feel like your character is stupid, that's fine. That's a decision you're making as a role player. But I don't think that denying, if I'm telling the table something and the characters are there, then there's no reason the players shouldn't be able to write it down. It's the player's game. It belongs to them, not their characters. Let's see. Let's see. Have I thought about turning to Mars Greek God asks a good question. Why not use the chat for rules questions? No reason other than it's 10 seconds delay. And I mean, it's 10 seconds delay before you hear me. And then there's probably, people have to argue. Anyway. But also I don't want to monitor Twitch chat. I want to run D&D. That's the answer. I would like to have somebody I know. Ideally, it would be Jerry, but that guy has a life, and his job is way more complex than mine at Troll Rock Studios. So we're incredibly lucky to get him as a technical producer. He's running. He makes sure all the mics work, and he makes sure the stream happens. But then he leaves and he goes home because he has a wife. And what I need is somebody to be my Twitch producer, and it should be somebody that I know in real life, who I trust, who is highly tech savvy, ideally more tech savvy than I am, and who gets it. And can sit there and monitor Twitch. And when someone in Twitch says something funny, call it out to us because we would like to hear it. But when someone in Twitch knows the answer to a question, lets us know. Or if somebody at the table wants to just poll the electorate and say, what does Twitch think I should do? Which I think would be neat. Could run that. We may never get that person, but we might. Let's see. Thanks for posting the handout. So is this just a Q&A session? Yep. And we're just going to do another half an hour. There are a couple. Let's see. I made a bunch of notes. No. Stand by. So there was stuff last night where like, let's see. What was the first thing we talked about? We talked about I much preferred. So I really want to concentrate. People are asking me questions about rules. People are asking me questions about all sorts of stuff. I apologize. We could easily spend a couple hours in here just talking about the abstracts of D&D, but I really want to focus on what happened with Gertz because I feel like that's the juice. You watched me run the game. Now let's talk about how that goes. At one point, Gertz asked when I said, okay, it's time to go start digging in the mines. He said, are we manacled? And if you read my notes, you will notice that, did I get some sun? Yeah, I've been on vacation. I've been getting a lot of sun, actually. He said, are we manacled? It was at the beginning of the session, and it was his time to go dig. And I was like, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. But I didn't say I didn't know. If you watch the stream, I think it just seems like I knew the answer. I did not know the answer. I had not thought about it. So this was my thinking. When he asked that, I said, well, it would make sense if you were. But then you would be screwed when it came time to escape. So I don't want to manacle you. So the answer can't be yes. It must be no. You can't be manacled. This literally all went through my head. You can't be manacled. In fact, I will make... Somebody just joined the stream. Hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. Hello, hemoglobin. I have some of you in my blood. Yokuzen57, I let him handle it. He found a homebrew rule for the mule. And I was like, that's fine. I didn't care. Didn't matter to me. I looked at it and I said, that seems fine. So he asked if he was manacled, and I said no. And in fact, I flipped it around. Because certainly he can't. It's like he can't be manacled because then he won't be able to escape when the cave-in happens. So he's stuck to it. So no. And then I said, in fact, the reason you're not manacled is because the Dwagar have so much power down here. It's a symbol of their power. Hello, Upawat. Welcome aboard. It's a symbol of their power and how hopeless your situation is. See, that's what I thought, and it all went through my head in like seconds, like not even like a tenth of a second. I said, not only are you not manacled, there's no point in manacling. You're all free to walk around here because it's so hopeless for you. So that's the kind of thing. If you want, I will tweet you a link to a 10-minute video on how to use your OBS settings. If you lower your stream quality a bit via OBS, people connecting at lower quality will buffer less. But why aren't they just seeing it at a lower resolution? I don't understand. That doesn't. I'm sure there's an answer. Did you expect Gertz to be dwarf sized? No, I was sure he was pretty. I thought he was going to be human sized. So let's see. He asked at one point if Edric was injured. Right? Remember when the cave-in happens, he goes, "Oh, is Edric injured?" And I was like, "Oh, probably he is." I hadn't thought about that, and I was like, I immediately thought, okay, he can't be so injured that he can't walk, right? Because that would defeat the purpose of trying to escape this place. So I gave him a bad injury. I wanted it to seem meaningful, so I broke his collarbone. But I let it. So where did I come up with the idea for Sin Metal? I made it up. Literally on the spot, I made it up. Not on the spot. I made it up the hour before we ran when I was typing my notes. So I broke his collarbone. And because I hadn't written that down, hadn't planned it, but it made sense. And I was like, yeah, he should be injured in some way. Let's see, what else? There was a point where, people are asking questions. I want to make sure if they're about what happened. I already know how the door to the Underdark is hidden. No, that is in the adventure I'm running. That is an actual part of the adventure I'm running. Did I fudge any rolls behind the screen? I'm glad you asked that. One Galactose. It's like glucose, but for the galaxy. I fudged one roll. Can you guys guess what it was? Those of you who are watching. Poor Edric. I saw that. Somebody did say poor Edric. He wouldn't have been injured if Gertz didn't mention it. And that's true. That is true. More messages below. Oh, sorry. I thought I had scrolled all the way down. Nope. Not initiative. Yes! Twitch name all one got it right. And it was the second guess. No, the random encounters raging system. Gertz rolled all those. Not me. No, not the pit trap. I rolled that, I think, in front of him. It was the direction Edric suggested. That is exactly it. Every single other roll that night was legit. I didn't, and part of that was I just rolled really badly all night. I don't know if you noticed. My dice mojo was not working for me. But when it was a question of going north or south, it's like, well, this is where the adventure is. This is where all the play, and this is Dalrath, and he's not going to go adventure with my friend Aaron. So that was the one time when he left it to Edric, and I didn't want to just have Edric say, "Oh, let's go south." Because Edric didn't know where they were. Edric didn't know that they were north of his home. They could have been south of his home or east or west of his home. So I said, well, we'll leave it up to fate. And I didn't pretend, I really did roll a die, but I went 1, 2, 3, it's north, 4, 5, 6, it's south. And I rolled a 2 and I said, it's south because that's where it had to go. So, hey, Frito, I like your chips. Yeah, I actually, if you, Dalaz Cat says, man, when you had him ask, have you ever been afraid? I felt like I really got to know his character, and that's why I did it. That was in the script, right? I had these couple of questions that I wanted Edric to ask because I didn't want Edric and Vorkus to be, sometimes the player's sidekick is an equal, right? And they're a duo, right? And that's part of the fun. But in this case, I definitely wanted Edric to be subservient to Vorkus. I wanted to see what it was like when it was up to Vorkus is not going to be the guy leading the party, I don't think, when we all get together. So I want this to be his opportunity to be the guy in charge. So I want Edric to ask him questions and just find out, tell me about your character, but coming from Edric. Matt, I'd really appreciate you not having the stream so late. Well, what would you like me to do about that? I fixed JT Geek. We started half an hour ago and we're going for another half an hour and stop. What would you have done? That's obviously the next question, right? Slate B. What would you have done if you didn't ask Edric and just said, let's go north? So there were a lot of questions in the Reddit thread, and I'm gonna try to get to them. And a lot of them, the question boiled down to, what would you would have done? What would you have done if this hadn't happened? If he had done this instead of that? J Freak, I think anytime you come here, you should be able to just go exclamation point topic, and yes, it's the same Razalax I mentioned in the stream. Just got here from Sony's E3 conference. Not a stream you want to go up against. Apart from Critical Role, which is also on Thursday night, which is game night at Turtle Rock, I don't have any plans to like counter program my activities. All this stuff's going to be up on YouTube. So somebody was asking a question, and I really forgot. A lot of the questions on Reddit were, what would you have done if he didn't do this, if he didn't do that? And I wish I could tell you, like, whatever I say now isn't the real answer, because what I say now is me thinking about it, not on the spur of the moment, not there in front of the player. It's talking to you, and so it's not the real answer. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but that's the reality. Is I might be able to give you an idea right now. If he had gone north instead of south, well, north is to Dalrath. Dalrath, that whole area gets nastier and wilder and scarier, and I might have just thrown random encounters at him until he turned around. I might have had Edric after the first random encounter, which might have been really nasty. I might have had Edric suggest, this is a bad idea, let's try south. And I'm sure Gertz would have said, like, okay, yeah. But maybe I wouldn't have done that in the moment. I don't know. In the moment, I have no idea what I would have done. I only know what I did do and what my thinking was. I'd really appreciate you having the stream this late more often. I mean, the stream has to happen. Like, I live on the west coast of the United States of America, and the sun rises and sets at different times here than it does where you live, relatively speaking. Or I guess, and so I can't stream at 3 in the afternoon because I have a job. I don't think, Evictor says, do you think Edric will try to tag along when the adventurers band together? I don't think you're going to see Edric for a long time. Think like 10th level. Am I deliberately making things surprising to keep viewers? What, these? Oh, you mean no, I'm Twitch Nemo 1. I am not, this is like a couple hours ago I said, hey, let's do a thing. Just because I wanted to do an after action report about the first D&D session, and I was going to do a highly produced video like my normal videos, but that would have taken forever, and I didn't want to do that. I was like, that takes too long. It takes too long to produce those videos for something like this. So let's just get together and chat and talk about it, and then this will end up on YouTube, and that'll hopefully be more fun. So yeah, there was a point where they escaped the Dwargar Fortress, right? Not Broken Spire Keep. They're still in the Underdark, and I said, there's a tunnel that goes left and right. Which way do you go? And Gert says, well, I don't know. Let's go left. You may guess it wouldn't have mattered which way he went. I wanted to give the illusion of a choice. And maybe that was superfluous, given that there wasn't any real consequence there from his point of view. From his point of view, there was no data to go on. So why even give him the choice is a valid question. And the answer is, I don't know. I probably could have not done that. But he could have gone in the Underdark. He could have gone left or right. He went left. It wouldn't have mattered. Either way, he would have gotten to the secret entrance into Broken Spire Keep. Did he surprise me? Yeah. Well, there was a bunch of stuff I didn't think of, which we'll get to. Do I always have notes like this? And so I posted my Noah Topper asks, do I always have notes like this? When I am not running a adventure, yeah, like if I'm running Out of the Abyss, which I'm not, right? These are my notes. Or my notes are getting the players into this, and then the engine of this just goes. And maybe I'll read ahead. I mean, I always read ahead. I'll read the adventure. Maybe I'll make notes in this, and I'll actually write in the adventure. Why not? It's mine. I can do what I want with it. I'll write notes in the adventure. But otherwise, you only get notes like what you saw for Gertz's adventure when I don't have a pre-generated adventure ready. How do I make it sound like you're not reading out of your notes? Just be dramatic, I think, is the best I can do. Couldn't I just have targeted the town north? No, I mean, I couldn't. The question Rite of Passage is asking is saying, when they escape Broken Spire Keep and they could go in any direction, and they're like, which way do we go? couldn't I just have, no, Broken Spire Keep is north of Tor. That is an established fact in my world, and they're going to go back to Broken Spire Keep, right, at some point. So I couldn't just move that around. Gertz is level 4 because the Shield of Andrim, the Shield of Gravesford, the Thursday night group is 4th level. So he's starting at the level of the lowest players. The Tuesday night group is 6th level. So for a little while, we're going to have a level disparity. But these guys will level up faster. I'm really glad 0086B. It looks like a hash for something. I'm glad you're enjoying Priest. It is not normal fantasy, so anybody who enjoys it surprises me. How does the timing work with this adventure over when the party took over Broken Spire Keep? What happened with Gertz, I think, is 6 weeks, 2 months before the events of what happened so far. So when the next time Gertz sees Broken Spire Keep, he will be surprised to discover that it has been taken over by humans that routed the orcs. And he'll be like, wow, I was here, a couple months ago and it was run by orcs. I seem surprised that Gertz didn't follow the Dwagar and the Dragonborn mentioning that I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that he didn't consider it Eternal Beard. I wasn't surprised that he didn't do it. I was surprised that as soon as something went south, he didn't investigate where did these Dwagar come from. He just said, let's go to Tor Keep. Perfectly valid answer. But whenever something like that happens, when I feel like the players have a couple of choices and they just immediately pick one, I'm like, did he know that he could do this? Because if he knew he could do this but decided to do that, that's fine. But if he didn't know he could do this, then maybe later, and I said that to him at the time, maybe later he'll be pissed and say, you didn't tell me I could. Right? So, Excuse me, people are asking lots of questions. What happened to the Sunday building stream? Sorry, I was too wiped out from Friday. How many players in the new game? 7. 1 critical role's worth. Okay, we are... all right, so let's see. Somebody asked, and this is a good question. A couple of people asked, actually, I think in the comments to the YouTube video, they were surprised when I explicitly said, yes, Jake the Great 98, I did. If Gertz hadn't asked, he would not have been hurt. And people said that in chat, and I saw it. But it's true. People were surprised that at one point I just explicitly told Gertz that Edric will do whatever you say. People were obviously surprised that I would just come out and say an NPC's motivation like that. I feel like once the NPC or the situation, whatever the situation is, doesn't have to be an NPC. In this case, it was. Whatever the situation is, once certain facts I think are or should be obvious to the character, I will make them obvious to the player. Because, and we had been role-playing Edric and Vorkus for a while, and I had always had him just go along with whatever Vorkus said, so it should have been obvious by that point. And so I called it out because I wanted Gertz to feel like it was his show. It wasn't the Vorkus and Edric show. It was the Vorkus show, and Edric was the sidekick. I wanted him to feel like these are my decisions. It's up to me. I didn't want him to have the out of just asking the NPC. You saw him. He tried to ask the NPC. No answer. Then he asked Twitch. He did everything he could to avoid making a decision. And I was like, and Twitch chat gave a lot of answers. So he was like, well, I guess I'll have to do what he wanted to do. Before looking, how many pounds of food and water did you expect? I don't know. I was probably because I hadn't thought about it. That's one of the reasons I was so surprised. So that's one thing that people asked a lot about was people were surprised that I just came out and said what Edric's motivation was. But I have no problem doing that if we've already explored the situation a little. For instance, in the Watchtower, he didn't occur to Gertz. You may have thought of this. And this did surprise me. It didn't occur to Gertz to just climb down the tower. Just climb down the tower. Make a climb check. Didn't need, as far as I know, we never even talked about it. Standby 0086B. We will get to that. He was like, oh, it's 20 feet down. If we jump, we'll get hurt. So we need a ladder or something. What about the rope? I was like, okay, rope. Yeah, you could use that. I didn't suggest climbing down, right? I didn't suggest. I needed to leave. It was his situation. I could have had Edric suggest it. Did not. And I said, if you want to get 20 feet of rope, you might be able to do it by having one or the other character stand on the other's shoulders. But then there's a danger that if you fail your check, you'll fall and pull the rope and alert the bell, and the bell will ring and alert the place. Or you could just play it safe and just cut the rope without having to stand on anybody's shoulders and get 10 feet of rope. So I gave him a choice. And if he succeeded at the riskier thing, then he would have a rope all the way down to the bottom. Otherwise, and people were like, wow, you just told him what the potential outcome was. And I was like, yes, because it was obvious. It would be obvious to anybody sitting there thinking about, okay, Jim, you and me are going to stand here. I'll boost you up and you grab this. And probably maybe Gertz hadn't thought about the bell ringing and pulling on the thing, but I knew that was an option. And I didn't want to, I don't run a gotcha game. I'm like, aha, you didn't think of this. So now I'm going to really, no, I was like, okay, well, this is an obvious situation. Like searching for, you didn't search for traps. Well, that's fine. Then you're going to hit a trap, right? But in this situation, there's a rope connected to a bell. Obviously, if you climb on a ladder and are precariously perched and you fall, you might pull that rope. That would be obvious. So just tell them. So somebody said, how do I feel about, this is a very strange question, but we'll get to it. Given my views on not making players feel alienated, why would you want to alienate your players? Don't we all feel that way? I guess not. How would you make that work in a world with medieval views on homosexuality, like mine? My world is not a medieval world. Only somebody subscribed, but I can't see it. Only this planet that we're on now had those views at that time. And even then, if you go, here's a great book to read. Medieval Lives by Terry Jones. He's a medievalist. He was also in Monty Python. It's a great book. It's a short book. It's a funny book. And it's him. He teaches, I think, at one of the big universities in England. And he's a medievalist. And he has done a lot of research about what it was actually like to live. It's kind of like a much easier version of A Distant Mirror. And he tells you what it was like to live back then. People were a lot less hung up about stuff. What you're wondering is, taking our current, in this culture, there are lots of other cultures in this world right now that don't have our messed up views on sexuality. You're imagining our views but that's not how they viewed it back then. And my world doesn't have Christianity in it. My world doesn't have sin. There's the sin metal, right? Because I thought that was a cool world. But my culture, these cultures do not have a Christ analog. They do not have a Bible analog. They don't have any of that stuff. So they have one of the main characters, the title character of my third book, is gay, right? We're going to find out. He may be the best swordsman alive. And doesn't matter to anybody. It's not a big deal because they don't have our culture. So that's the answer to that. Although that doesn't even have anything to do with the stream from the other night, but I didn't want to gloss over it. Did I expect him to explore? There's a couple other things I want to get to. We're almost done, actually. Let's scroll down. Okay, let's look here. How would you have dealt with Gertz's character doing something unpredictable? The book is Terry Jones' Medieval Lives. Why are people saying spoilers? Oh, I didn't say. How would you have dealt with Gertz's character doing something unpredictable? I would have winged it. Shouting to the orc up in the tower. The orc probably would have rang the bell. Probably, but I don't know what would have happened. It would have, and what I'm telling you now is probably not what I would have happened spontaneously inventing it. The TV show Medieval Lives actually is based on the book. Yeah, I think the book is better, obviously. Yes, Two Muffins. I'm sorry, you got to wait because it's going to be I've got the adventure right here. It's going to be Lost Mine of Phandelver in Calabras. So you're going to see how it works. I probably would have had the orc alert the tower, and that just all that would have done. If the orc had alerted the tower, maybe he would have had to have one more encounter, get some orcs, and then he would have had to run and escape. He would have got away. I'm sure he would have got away. It just would have lit a fire under his ass, is what it would have done. It would have meant the clock is ticking. The orcs are coming. And that probably would have resolved. I mean, here's a writerly thing. Good action heroes are reactive, not active. John McClane does everything he can do in Die Hard to avoid going up against the terrorists. He calls the cops. He calls them several times. He tries to set the fire alarms off. He tries to do everything he can to not act. And only when all that fails do things go south. So Gertz doing something unpredictable, ringing the bell, calling out to the orc, and causing the keep to activate. That probably would have just lit a fire under his ass and made it so he was more active, which would have made everything a lot better. Do you have a backup plan if the gods decided he should have headed the opposite direction of the barony? We talked about that. If he had just said, let's go north, I would have probably just thrown random encounters at him until he turned around. Gert saw a wizard named Elspeth. No, not the same one from the books. Elspeth is a medieval name. There was no slave or prisoner. He used a soldier background. Is there any red gold around from the previous events? No. When Caloril the Vile died, the red gold went with him. The curse that he enacted went with him. But if I wanted to use the red gold again, I could. Why did Gertz have to make int checks to understand Dwarvish? Well, it wasn't Dwarvish, it was deep speech. And I didn't know that deep speech, I just didn't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. I didn't know that deep speech was not a language, that it's like basically telepathy. I definitely don't think the Grey Dwarves were speaking Undercommon. So I think they were probably speaking some kind of Under-Dwarvish, something I just made up. And so it's a distant, they're dwarves, so they're distant relatives. And so the language is somewhat similar, but so far removed that I wanted there to be a chance for he who speaks Dwarvish, to have a chance of understanding this. And he picked that up. He understood that. Have I posted my notes or the map for my world yet? Yes. They're in one of the, they'll probably be on the subreddit. I'll put up on a subreddit soon. Did I curate the music? Yeah, I've got a whole playlist I have on Google Play. Fixing my earlier question, would you run a one-on-one intro for Lost Mine of Fendelver? Lost Mine of Fendelver, for a first level starting game, I probably would not do that. I'm looking for more people. So let's do /topic. That, yeah. Can I share my playlist? Probably eventually, but not right this second because I'm doing this Q&A. Let's see. I thought the one-on-one. Do I usually roleplay? Do I use encumbrance? That's not really. Only when things are really heavy. If Edric had died at some point, would I have resurrected him? No. How was a 4th level guy going to get resurrected? Introduced a random passerby. I would have left it up to Gertz. Would have been him on his own. So how did I decide to start him at level 4? Because there are 2 groups that are meeting. One of them is 4th level, one of them is 6th level. So new players start at the lowest level of the group. The thing that went, the Slate B asks, you guys can guess, right? What did I think went the best during the session? What do you guys think? You can guess, you can tell, right? You guys get it. It's starting to get a bit confusing. Snake was taken. I don't know, maybe. I think if you just watch this, once the 2 groups, it's confusing because there have been several different groups, but that's about to stop. So it's about to get a lot less confusing. What do you guys think was the best part of the stream? To answer Slate B's question. There's really only one thing left I want to, there's only one thing left I want to talk about, and which is good because we only have 12 minutes left. Tomorrow, well, the first group session at least a week. So, yeah, you guys, okay. So, I think, so there are two answers. So, the thing that I thought went best, which is very different than I think what you guys think went best, and this is the thing I want to talk about for the next 10 minutes, and then we're done. And we're going to play D&D tomorrow night. And we'll probably do a Q&A Wednesday night about how the game went last night. That's the system, is we play and then we talk about how it went. I loved playing Edric. That was my favorite part. I liked talking. I liked every time Gertz would ask him a question. Once he said there was a moment, I knew about the stammer. I knew he was a coward. Stammer, coward, priest, acolyte, doesn't have a saint. These are all the things that fed into who he was. But then there was a moment when Gertz said something, like, I think Edric suggested something, and Gertz is like, well, I don't know if that's good. He goes, oh, yeah, of course. No, that's terrible. And he's like, I'm so useless. When he said that, he's like, I'm so useless. That self-loathing that Edric had that I didn't know about, that I discovered in that moment, I'm like, yeah, I love playing this guy. I could play that guy, all night. And I did. I loved playing Edric. That was, to me, the most successful part. I had no idea what was going to happen when he got to Orlane. I thought by the time he got to Orlane, that was basically, they were done. But this, I realized over the course of the session that his mother was from this area. And I guess I decided that he was going to have to find out where. Like, there was going to, like, somebody around here knew his mom. right? So it's not like a mystery, right? And so I guess at some point I decided it would be in Orlane. I don't know why. And Edric was from Orlane. That was the place he was trying to get back to. And I hadn't really done any. If you read my notes, I had no work. I had done no work on those questions, on how these people were going to receive him, on how they were going to treat him. Apart from the fact that they were going to be suspicious of him because they're strangers. But Edric wasn't a stranger. Edric was from there. So I invented the idea that since this was the town where Against the Cult of the Reptile God had happened, where there was a curse on the town, that the townspeople thought that Edric was just another cursed townsperson. I invented that because I needed something. I needed some drama. It couldn't just be, oh, welcome home. That's boring. Does not lead to anything interesting happen. And I decided that his grandfather was there. I couldn't think of anything else to do. I thought, well, I guess his mom had a parents and they might still be alive. So screw it. Your grandfather is alive in here. I just made all that up. And it would have gone a lot better if I had thought about those things and written them down in my notes. But I didn't. And so I wasn't happy with that. I wasn't happy with the way that went. It felt like it would be obvious to Gertz and you, but Gertz is more important. He's the player, that I was just winging it and just making it all up. And I don't like that. So all the folks, no, I really, no, I'm watching the clock, Raisin Girl, because at 8 o'clock we're done. I said I was going to do this for an hour, uh, and we basically talked about all the stuff I wanted to talk about. I did not like how things went once they got to Orlane, only because I discovered I was woefully underprepared. I hadn't thought about the fact that this was, I guess I had decided in the midst of I hadn't thought about where exactly is Edric from. I think I had just said he's from Tor, which is a whole barony. But I needed them to get to Orlane. So then I put those two things together and said, I guess he's from Orlane. But I did that in the spur of the moment. That was stupid. I should have put that work into the... of all the things that happened, I put all the work here at the front. I don't know if you can see that. I put all the work here at the front, the Dwargar Fortress, escaping Broken Spire Keep, and then I just come up with a couple of encounters and the excavation and stuff like that. But really, what I should have put a lot of work into what happened when they got to Orlane. And I didn't. So... oh, hey, Gertz. No, I mean, Gertz asks, hey, he had an idea for his character before he rolled his stats, and my method of stat generation is atypical. I say, okay, 4d6, drop the lowest, and that's your strength. And then the next one is your dex, and then the next one is your con. So you're discovering your character. It's like consulting the oracle. But Gertz is like, I know what I want to play. But really, Gertz, you knew you wanted to play a mule. You didn't necessarily know what kind. And so there was some wiggle room there. And I was like, that's fine. It was only obvious to Two Muffins because you would read the notes. Yeah. That was a situation. When he got to Orlane and met his grandfather where it was all improvised. And in the context of it being improvised, I felt like that was okay. I felt like that was a B+ improvisation. But that should not have been something I improvised, is my point. That's the kind of thing that should have been in the notes. That's important. I should have done more thought on that. Lastly, I was really disappointed that we didn't get through that combat with the Dwagar at the end. I was really disappointed when we got to the end that I had to just hand wave that whole battle with the Dwagar. And I think probably I maybe made a mistake because I implied the Dwagar were so nasty that Sir Razalax and 2 4th level... Sir Razalax is 6th level, and he's the Knight Exorcist, which is a title that comes with other powers. His breath weapon is a D8. His breath weapon has a recharge of 5 to 6, which is why he could breathe twice in the span of only a couple of rounds. And by implying that the Dwargar were like unbeatable, I planted the idea in Gertz's head, which I've since offline corrected, that like there's no way we could ever go up against these guys. Well, they're going to have to, right? See, there's some DM advice. I set this thing up. The Dwargar come, they knock these guys out. We could have actually. had that combat play out, and they probably would have killed one or two of the Dwagar, but the hunger of Hadar would have completely changed the battle, right? So if I were going to do that again, I probably would have just narrated it like I did, because I was stuck. I was between a rock and a hard place. But I would have had the battle be a lot less one-sided, because I want to make it seem like the Dwagar can be beaten, because they're going to go fight him. Right? Don't ever make your bad guys seem too unbeatable unless that's your goal. Remember Caloril the Vile showing up? He's 9th level in their first level. That's the goal, is to make him a thing to get to. But the Dwagar are what they're about to go fight. So don't make those guys seem invincible. Why didn't you skip the ghoul encounter to play? Well, I didn't really know how long the ghoul encounter was going to go. And I didn't know how tired I was going to be, and it's one of those things where your energy level goes like, actually your energy level does this all over there. I got, they second wind, right? And so it's like, second wind, ghouls, and then crash. And I was like, I can't. So I apologize. If you bandy about potions of domination, will it change how players behave? Well, players haven't gotten any of those yet. So I think we're at the end. We talked about the whole session. We did an hour Q&A. I answered all the questions on the Reddit thing, except the ones that weren't about the... let me refresh it just to make sure. And sort by... Did I have to make a roll to see if his grandfather believed his story? I don't think he had to roll. So people who are just joining us, you're joining us literally at the end. And those of you who had questions about stuff... that is just still playing, or she's just Lady Serial. What I do is I play Lady Serial, and then every once in a while I'll direct message her on Twitter and just ask her a question about what she thinks her character would do. But she comes back to Southern California every once in a while, so expect to see her again. It might have been Snake was taken. It might have been it might have been the sugar from the chocolate. So we have 3 minutes before we're done. I want to thank everybody for coming and watching this. We covered how the session with Gertz went. We covered all the stuff that I thought went well. All the stuff I really liked. Escaping the Dwagar Fortress. I thought that was a lot of fun. I thought that was cool. A lot of neat stuff happened that I hadn't planned on. Edric being blind. He doesn't have dark vision. That was fun. Escaping Broken Spire Keep. I had the whole map of Broken Spire Keep. It's from Night Below. It's a real thing. It's the reason it wasn't in the notes, because I just said they end up at Broken Spire Keep. Then I switched to my module, ran that, and he could have gone in he could have done any number of crazy things could have happened, but I knew I could improv that because I had all of this information already, the actual adventure. Getting to Orlane, I just had to wing it, and that would have been better if I hadn't wung it. Sorry, Lita Phoenix. I'm sorry you joined us at the end. But tomorrow is D&D at Turtle Rock Studios. It's going to probably be on Tuesday nights, because we have the Tuesday night group and the Thursday night group. And so we're bringing some of these guys in here. And we're going to play starting at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, Pacific Standard Time. We're going to stream it. And then probably Wednesday night, we'll do another one of these. We'll talk about how I think it went. And I'll put my notes online before the game so you can follow along and read the notes. Because, while I am a huge proponent and advocate for Critical Role, because I think it is the best ambassador for D&D out there, my juice is showing you what's going on behind the screens and helping you be a better DM and giving you the confidence to try it in the first place. And so that's the reason we're streaming this stuff is here's the notes. Here's what I think is going to happen. And then watch what happens. And then let's talk about how I perceived it from the other end. And you may have discovered a lot of stuff in this stream that surprised you. The updated Collabora stuff is available. Go check the subreddit. Gertz did not know about this. I know he didn't. We are like 300 subs away on the Hexographer giveaway. So 300 more people. And then I'm going to lock the comments and we're going to draw it. Gertz is awesome. Gertz was a lot of fun to run for. So that's it. We have 1 minute left. I said it was going to be an hour. It was an hour. And I'm going to click export and put this up on YouTube. It'll be up probably in half an hour, 45 minutes. And then I'll see you folks in 24 hours where Voracus meets the Revenant Vow. And they start, and there's going to be a whole adventure that's just them hanging out together. The Fantasy Grounds giveaway is going to happen. All right, folks, that's it for this stream, the Q&A stream. Expect to see another one of these Wednesday night. So D&D tomorrow night, and then a Q&A Wednesday night. And unless the Q&A ends up being, I thought this was good. And if it keeps being good like this, then we'll keep doing it. Otherwise, who knows? We'll go back to making cool videos like we used to. All right, folks, that was it. Thanks for stopping by. I will see you tomorrow night.